Have the Indian selectors got it wrong yet again?
The India's test squad to play against the West Indies was just announced. Interestingly, for the very first time in a long time, there weren't a lot of surprises in the players that got picked. But there were a few names that people were talking about in terms of why did they get dropped or if they deserve to be dropped in the first place. And more importantly, a lot of people were having conversations about if Jasprit Bumrah should be even in the squad, should even play in India to begin with. Now, before we answer all of these questions, hit that subscribe button, and here's a trailer from our membership. But his IPL numbers are better.
There are a lot of people who think that Dhoni has not fulfilled his T20's potential, and that's because they look at his IPL numbers.
MS Dhoni in the IPL, and is he a better IPL batter than he is for the Indian team or in the international?
Short answer is yes. The thing that stands out here is he has been responsible for a couple more losses as opposed to international. And then there is one innings where RCB plays CSK 2019 where he almost pulls off the impossible.
Talked about how MS Dhoni and AB de Villiers in international T20 cricket sucked. Would you consider franchise cricket versus international cricket? But because
Starting off with Jasprit Bumrah, this has been the biggest talking point, especially since that England series, because Jasprit Bumrah from then on has been managing his workload. Now, it was no surprise there when he was decided to only play 3 of the 5 test matches, but there were a lot of mixed opinions around whether or not Bumrah should even play in India. And that's where the first thing you need to see is how Jasprit Bumrah has done for India when it comes to Indian conditions. If you look at the last test season, we played test matches against England, Bangladesh and New Zealand. It's important to see how Bumrah not only shaped up in all of these, but also how he compared to some of the other players. At home, Jasprit Bumrah in all has played 12 test matches where he's got 47 wickets at a very impressive average of 17.9. And in this time period, he has been India's third highest wicket taker in the test format for matches in India, and he's also the best pacer. While Bumrah has played limited test matches in India, his comeback post-injury was something else. The way he transformed his game not only overseas but especially in India was something to look out for. This is also evident in the England as well as Bangladesh series that he played last year. In the 4 test matches that he played versus England, he got 19 wickets. He did this at an average of 16.8 and a brilliant strike rate of just 32.7. Not only was he the only fast bowler in the top 7 wicket takers for the series, but he also had the best average and the best bowling strike rate for anyone who's bowled at least 10 overs. And in this same test series, India's number 2 pacer Mohammad Siraj played 4 matches and he got just 6 wickets. He did this at an average of 46 and a strike rate of 67.1, and you can see that this is a huge difference. Even if we compare more specific figures like the kind of bowling spells that have taken place, the breaks between bowling spells, or even just the length of spells, an interesting picture is drawn. If you look at these figures, what firstly stands out is just the sheer volume of overs that Bumrah bowled as compared to Siraj. There's a clear gap, and Bumrah by far was the most bowled fast bowler for India. Not only that, he also bowled a lot more spells, and he also got a very small break as compared to Siraj on average between spells.
So clearly after the England series, you already know that Jasprit Bumrah was a standout, and he was one of the reasons for India's victory in that series, especially when the spinners weren't able to get a break. And post the IPL season, we did have a home series where we were visited by Bangladesh first. Even in this, if you look at Bumrah's figures, he played 2 matches picking up 11 wickets with an average of just 12 and a strike rate of 26. If you compare Bumrah's figures to every other bowler in the series, he was not only the best fast bowler, he was the best bowler by a mile. He had the best strike rate, the best average and the most amount of wickets in the series. But now if you were to compare him to Mohammad Siraj, he didn't have the best series once again at home. He played 2 matches picking up only 4 wickets with an average of 34 and a strike rate of 61. Now again, if you break things down a little further and if you look at the total spells, the amount of spells and the average break, you will realize that even here Bumrah has just out-bowled Siraj in this test series. It's almost a similar story as compared to the England series where Bumrah has just bowled more amount of overs, more spells, has a shorter break as compared to Siraj. But if anything in this series, Siraj might just have a longer spell on average as compared to Bumrah.
And from there, if you move to the New Zealand series where India got absolutely demolished, you will see that this is a rare outlier amongst all of the series that we had in the last year. Here, unlike the other series, Jasprit Bumrah got just 3 wickets in his 2 matches at a bowling average of 42 and a strike rate of 82. And Siraj just continued to get worse. In the 2 matches, he picked up just 2 wickets at an average of 58 and a strike rate of 93. Here too, however, what you can see is that India kept going back to Bumrah. Not only has Bumrah bowled more overs as compared to Siraj, but India also wanted to go back to Bumrah more often and give him longer spells. Unfortunately for India, it did not pan out in this series, and it did not pan out for the fast bowlers either. And so to answer the very first question, Bumrah is a necessity for India when it comes to even playing test matches in Indian conditions. The simple reason is that India are just too heavily reliant at this point on Jasprit Bumrah. In the last 3 series, Mohammad Siraj has not been able to step it up, not been able to get a lot of wickets at home, and has generally found it hard to get going. And with the added fact that Akashdeep is not in the squad and Prasidh Krishna not tested in Indian conditions, Bumrah becomes the de facto spearhead that he already is for this Indian bowling lineup. Another thing to remember is that after this West Indies test series, South Africa also come to India to play test matches, and so Bumrah will need that mileage behind his legs moving into an important series like South Africa.
This is where we get into an interesting aspect of the selection and 4 batters that we will go over, and that's Sai Sudarshan, Devdutt Padikkal, Karun Nair and Abhimanyu Easwaran. Starting off, Ajit Agarkar was very candid about the non-selection of Karun Nair. He talked about how every player cannot get 14-15 games to find a spot in the team, especially when you're already 30 plus years of age, and especially when you've already played for India, then got dropped, played a lot of first-class cricket, and then to be picked once again. In the 4 matches that he got in England, he clearly disappointed. Not only was he not able to bat under pressure, but especially when India needed him to get a big score after he was settled, he continued to disappoint. In the 8 innings that he got, he scored 205 runs with an average of just 25, when a lot of other batters were just flourishing with runs with only 150 under him. Now, it almost seemed obvious that he was not going to be picked for the Indian team against the West Indies, because for starters, he was not picked for the Dilip Trophy and then wasn't picked for the India A game versus Australia A, and even on the day when the Indian team squad was announced, he wasn't even picked for the Irani Cup. So it almost seems likely, with the other options available, his career for the Indian team is most probably done.
And from there, we go to the much talked about cricketer, and that's Abhimanyu Easwaran. Here's an example of a player who's done everything right when it comes to first class cricket, but has just not been able to make it into that playing 11. In fact, he finally finds himself outside the test squad, but there's still not too much to panic because he is still getting picked for India. He still got picked for the Irani Cup and also in the Dilip Trophy. It is a bit unfortunate that someone like Sai Sudarshan or even Devdutt Padikkal in this case has been given the nod ahead of Abhimanyu Easwaran, and it is just a matter of time for him to possibly get a chance for the Indian team.
From the 2 players who are not in the squad and are dropped, let's talk about a player who's returning into the squad, and that's Devdutt Padikkal. In 45 first class games, he has just more than 3,000 runs with an average of 43 with 718 50s in his name. Not just this, he's played 2 matches for the Indian team, one against England at home and one against Australia in Australia, where he scored a total of 90 runs with an average of 30 and 150. Before we talk about what he's done this season and his recent form, in the last Ranji Trophy, he played 4 matches scoring 125 runs with a disappointing average of 32. And that's when his recent form matters, and the amount of runs he's been scoring came as no surprise that he was picked for the Indian team. In the recently concluded Dilip Trophy, he played 1 game where he scored 57 and had a 16 not out. But more importantly, when he got picked for the India A game to play against Australia A, in the first innings of the first game, he scored 150. But this is where things get a little interesting, because we were digging up names and numbers, and we were trying to find out why Devdutt Padikkal is high above the ladder as compared to so many other batters who have been scoring a lot of runs in the Ranji format. Sure, he plays the IPL, has fantastic list A numbers, and has also done well in the Ranji Trophy years prior, but if you look at the amount of players waiting in the wings currently, it's a bit of a food for thought when you think about why Devdutt Padikkal was selected to begin with. Because if you look at players like Yash Rathod and Iyer Joel, who are in their 20s, very early 20s in fact, they've played around 20 first class matches, but they already have the same amount of hundreds that Devdutt does, and in fact both of them average in the 50s. Sure, they haven't played a lot of games for the India A squad, and they haven't played abroad like Devdutt has, but if you look at these numbers, they are surely impressive. And also, if you look at the second and the third highest run scorer in the Ranji Trophy game last season, Shubham Sharma and Tanmay Agrawal are not even in the conversation, even though they have scored a lot more runs than Devdutt and have averages similar or better than him. The only downside and the one reason that they might never play for the Indian team is the fact that they're already in their early 30s. And Ajit Agarkar has already talked about how if you have to give a player a long run, you might as well give it to someone who's very young.
Sai Sudarshan in his first class career is still relatively young. In the 33 matches that he has played, he's got a little over 2,000 runs at an average of 38, and he's got 700s and 750s. Now at face value, value, the selection of Sai Sudarshan was something that sparked a lot of debate because he was only one of the few batters in Indian history to be picked without a first-class average of at least 40. In the England series, however, in the 3 matches that he did play, he got 140 runs at an average of 23, but he had 150 to show for his efforts. More than just the amount of runs he scored here, he showed that he definitely had something that made the selectors pick him in the first place. And so going from that angle and maintaining the continuity of this test squad, and also the fact that Sai Sudarshan is extremely young, it makes sense to have him in this Indian squad for the West Indies series. In the games versus Australia A, in the first innings of the first match, he scored 73 on a deck where it was absolutely flat and players like Devdutt as well as Dhruv Jurel scored hundreds. And so there you might consider that he did miss out, but when you look at the second game versus Australia A, this is where Sai showed his grit and determination. In an innings where India was dismissed for just 194, Sai Sudarshan was the only batter to score 50 plus and he eventually got 75. And as for the wicketkeepers, it is no surprise that Dhruv Jurel will be starting for India, and that's simply because Rishabh Pant is still injured and recovering, whereas the backup wicketkeeper in N. Jagdishan is an interesting selection. Jagdishan has been scoring heaps and heaps of runs in domestic cricket, and he's also been doing extremely well for India A. In fact, this is also the reason that Ajit Agarkar said that India does not need a backup opener like Abhimanyu Ishwaran, because Jagdishan not only doubles up as a wicketkeeper but also as the backup opener. In 54 first-class matches that Jagdishan has played, he has an average of 50.4. He's also got 11 hundreds and 16 first-class 50s. To go with this, he also scored a 64 versus Australia A, but more importantly, even in the Duleep Trophy, he has been scoring a mountain of runs. In the only game that he played in the Duleep Trophy, he got scores of 197 and 52 not out. So clearly, Jagdishan is someone who has been in good form. But it's not only his recent form, but how he's been shaping up through the years of domestic cricket. This is also evident in last year's Ranji Trophy, where in 8 games he had an average of 56 with 200s and 350s.
Someone else who makes a return, and this is in the bowling department, and that's Axar Patel. If you look at his test numbers objectively, you would be shocked that he was dropped from the squad to begin with. In 14 matches, he's picked up 55 wickets with an average of 19 and a strike rate of 46. He has 5 fifers and 1 10-fer. And even with the bat, Axar Patel can be reliant. We have already seen that in the white ball format, but if you look at his test numbers, they're still impressive. He scored 646 runs with an average of 35, and across these 14 matches, he also has 4 50s. But some people might think that he's lucky to be back into the squad, because the last time he played a home series and the last time he played a test match, in fact, was against England at home, where he played 2 matches picking up only 5 wickets with an average of 41. He was highly disappointing in that series, which is also why he was dropped right after. With the likes of Kuldeep Yadav, Jadeja and Sundar in the mix, it will be interesting to see if Axar Patel gets a game. But because we know that Gautam Gambhir likes all-rounders and likes bowlers who can bat, it wouldn't be surprising if he gets a go from the first test match.
Couple of closing pointers is around the Mumbai batter Sarfaraz Khan as well as Shreyas Iyer. Now both of these players are missing out for different reasons. With Sarfaraz Khan, he has continued to suffer from injury, and that's also why you haven't seen him in any of the tournaments like the Duleep Trophy or the India A games. Apart from this, Shreyas Iyer has also requested BCCI for a break from the red ball format for a period of 6 months. Now this is due to the fact that he has continuous back spasms, and this is not something he's able to support his body with in the longer format. With Akashdeep, it's something worth thinking about. In place of Akashdeep, you have Prasidh Krishna, who will be a part as a third pacer of the squad. Akashdeep has been picked for that Irani Cup match, which is starting on 30th September, and so it's interesting as to which direction India might go with him moving forward. It could be as simple as him not having enough game time post his injury, and so the selectors just want to ease him back into the red ball format.
Now this has been our video on some of the players who've been picked for and dropped from the Indian squad. Now if you've enjoyed this video, like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff. Let us know what you think of each of these players on the comments below. If you aren't a member on our channel, think about being a member because of the amount of videos and the type of videos that we will put out every Saturday. And if you haven't followed us on our socials, the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.